All right, welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. Guest with us tonight, special one. Trevor's on vacation in Florida for work. He says it's work, but it's just a vacation. Um, Many of you have listened to this, know he's a frequent contributor. Zach Tremmel will join us tonight, and those of you at Steve Shetler Media, obviously Zach's been the coach there at Sigourney for several years of basketball and volleyball and everything else like that, involved in the community and everything there. So again, thank you, Zach, for joining us with Trevor being out of town on vacation. We're going to start with football and we're going to talk, a little bit briefly about that. We'll be back next week with more of the Super Bowl preview. That's the nice thing about having the 2 weeks off. I don't know if I really love the 2 weeks off. I understand it. But Trevor and I next week we'll get back into really previewing the game. But just to kind of recap, obviously, let's start with the Chiefs and the Ravens. I did pick the Chiefs, and obviously I was correct in that pick. And simply, I mean, if you listened last week, I just said I picked Mahomes over Jackson just to make the plays, and that's exactly what happened. Um, Lamar just couldn't make the plays down the stretch when it was needed for his team. And I know Zach was not able to watch the game, but just everything you've seen, heard, read, and then the Chiefs have been there before, and the Ravens hadn't. And I think that's what showed during the game. And just in the aftermath, just looking back, I think more people would have picked the Chiefs just because they'd been there before.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I picked the Ravens, but I am not shocked at all that, the Chiefs won. Like you said, I feel like both teams were defensively, they were probably about a push. They both had very solid defenses. But when it all comes down to it, Kansas City has the best player in the world, and it's hard to bet against them. But I just thought, this might have been the Ravens' year, but, Lamar's going to have a lot of questions to answer again. I mean, he's a great quarterback, but is he in that level, that top 3 or 4 tier? And that's still going to be the debate over and over until, he can win the big one in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's probably or most likely the odds-on favorite to win the MVP again this year. So he's going to be a two-time MVP, two-time number one seed, and never even get to the Super Bowl. And that was actually his first AFC Championship game. And first half, when they were playing well, he was able to run around. He got, the Chiefs defense kind of let him do his thing. Second half, Chiefs changed up their defense and made him throw the ball. And just, especially that last interception, it wasn't necessarily the wrong read, but he had to go over the top and give his guy the only chance to catch it or incomplete pass. And he left it about 4 yards short. And obviously the interception happened. And so he just couldn't make that throw when it was needed at crunch time.
Yeah, and those are going to be the questions again next year because the Ravens are going to be right there. I think they have everything they need. It's just a matter of sometimes Kansas City is just the best team, and it's hard to beat them in the playoffs. And you gotta, I don't know, make a few tweaks. But the Ravens have a very good team. But as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are there, they're going to be right there in that AFC Championship realm every single year, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And, just, one bit of NFL news here. Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator, did take the Seahawks job today. So they will need to find a new defensive coordinator. But this was his first year as defensive coordinator with the Ravens. He was with Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. He'd kind of been back and forth between the two Harbaughs. And he did take the Seahawks job today. So they will have a new defensive coordinator going forward.
Yeah, and he did a very good job with the Ravens. He made their defense much better. I don't know a lot about him. I mean, he is replacing Pete Carroll, who I feel like is one of the best coaches we've had here in the last 30 years in all of football. So, that's going to be a tall task, and Seattle seems to be a solid franchise. So I would think he's landing in a good spot to be successful.
Absolutely. He's young. He's only like 37 years old. So he's a young guy. That's probably enough of the game there. Obviously, I just don't know how you bet against Mahomes, even going forward in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Chiefs are a local team here. 49ers, I don't have any, don't really care who wins by teams wise, but obviously being a Cyclone fan, I like Brock Purdy, but I'm going to have a hard time picking against the Chiefs when the time comes to make some picks.
Yeah, this is a very tough Super Bowl. I mean, obviously, you're going to hear the Mahomes versus the 49ers have everything, it, except maybe a quarterback. But I think Purdy's kind of proved everything here, especially coming back from 17. But like you said, when the money's on the line, I always feel like the quarterback's the one. And Patty Mahomes is making an argument to be the greatest quarterback in NFL history. So
Oh, absolutely. I
we'll
mean,
see.
he's the best player on the planet right now. So
Yeah, that's not even an argument. After these playoffs, it has kind of solidified that, in my opinion.
yeah, so just, kind of going back to the 49ers Lions game, Lions get off to a fast start, you know, scoring their first few possessions, and Brock Purdy doesn't play as bad as he did last week, but still wasn't great. And then for some reason, the second half comes and they make good adjustments this time, and they made the plays, and he had a great second half. And just as important as a couple of his throws was his running and escaping sacks and then running and getting first downs and 20, 30 yards. And I think the stat was he only had like 9 less yards than Lamar Jackson running total. And so everybody's like, well, Jackson's a runner and he can do that. Well, Purdy on this day proved that he could do it when needed. Mahomes is one that can do it when needed. That's, and we're going to get to this in a little bit, but that's the difference in Iowa quarterbacks. They physically cannot do that. And in today's football, you have to have a quarterback that can do it. Doesn't, maybe not first, second, but at third, he's, escaped it. The play is just, in scramble mode. You have to be able to move the chains with your feet if necessary.
Yeah, he made some big plays, obviously, in that game to get them back in it. There's going to be some fourth down calls that you're going to question a coach on, but ultimately, got to give the credit to the 49ers for making all the plays. I mean, they put themselves in a major hole and were able to overcome that. And that's probably something they do, maybe one out of 15 games, and they were able to do it on the biggest stage. So they've got to be coming in with all sorts of confidence right now into the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that two of the worst games they played all year were the first halves of the two playoff games. And then, they turned it on in two straight fourth quarter comebacks for Brock Purdy and the offense. And that's kind of been Kyle Shanahan's bugaboo is he gets a lead and then they never give it up, just the way his offense is run and everything. But if they get behind, he could just never catch up. And obviously the last couple of weeks have been a little bit different, but they're looking a little bit here. All right, let's not get behind like they've been. And, obviously the offense wasn't very good, but the defense was really bad in that first quarter, first half. And they changed what they were doing against the Lions. And it showed. I think their plan or whatever thought was happening did not work. And it showed. And then they had to make a change. And that shows a good coaching staff as well. They knew it wasn't working and they made the critical change. And then the players made plays. And then getting with Dan Campbell in the fourth down, I didn't agree with all the calls, but that's what he does. It's how they got there. The players know what's going to happen. The biggest thing I had was not even the fourth down play, but when they were down there, scored their last touchdown, they threw it on first down, they threw it on second down, they ran it on third down and had to take a timeout and then scored on fourth down. But that was the one that got them. It made it so they had to get the onside kick. And then this is a whole nother argument you could spend a lot of time on, but the rules for the kicking and the onside kick essentially make it impossible to receive an onside kick. I don't know. Something needs to be changed with the kickoff rules or something. Either just totally take it out of the game or change them back to at least make it exciting because it's 99% a touchback or just a fair catch now. It's just they've taken it out of the game. And that's a little bit for situations like that. It's sad.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. They don't want people getting hurt, but yeah, I mean, to recover an onside, like you said, is near impossible. But getting back to Detroit in that second half with Dan Campbell, he didn't make, you're going to get second guessed when you blow a 17-point lead and, go for it on those fourth downs. But if you look at what he's done at Detroit, it's probably one of the best coaching jobs in the history of the NFL, the way he's turned around that program and got him from where they probably should be playing in the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah. And it wasn't his fault that Reynolds dropped two passes. One was an easy one across the middle they should have just caught. The other one would have been a good one off to his side. But NFL receivers should make those catches. So
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, Detroit had a hell of a season, and they're going to be one of the favorites next year, I would think. But we all know how the NFL is; things can turn so fast, and you look at a team with 3 or 4 wins, all of a sudden could be right there next year. So, Detroit looks promising, but again, I wouldn't be shocked if they ended up 8-8 or 8-9 next year, something like that, because it's just how the NFL. It's hard to stay on top in the NFL.
absolutely. And I did like this about Dan Campbell is, I think he said in the post game or to his team, whatever, that, hey, this might have been our only chance. And he's right, because you just never know. The team that, you think is one step away doesn't get there the next year. Injuries happen, whatever. A couple free agent moves, a coach moves on. Another coaching thing, a big move for them is they got to keep their offensive coordinator. Sure sounded like he was going to go to the Commanders. And I don't know if he changed his mind or just decided not to, or the Lions made you know, a pay increase, whatever, to get his services, to keep his services, whatever. But Ben Johnson's staying instead of going to a head coaching job. So I think that is big for the Lions. And so that's a great situation for them. Continuity is never bad.
Yeah, and like you just getting back to what you said with Dan Campbell saying, we may never get back. I mean, you look at Dan Marino; he goes to the Super Bowl, what, as a rookie quarterback, and they're probably thinking we're going to be there
Yep.
5 or 6 times, and they never really come close again. So, they got a lot of pieces coming back. Like you said, the O coordinator is staying, which you don't see that in the NFL a whole lot when, they're all trying to get to that next level. But again, they definitely look promising. I mean, that division is starting to take shape all of a sudden with Green Bay. All of a sudden looks very promising. The Bears have all sorts of picks and decisions to make. So, and the Vikings, if they re-sign Kirk Cousins, that's all of a sudden turns into a pretty strong division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Bears they've got to figure out what they're doing. Obviously, they've hired their coordinator now. So, and obviously that situation that they almost had to have already made a decision, I would think, but who knows? But they're going to have all kinds of picks no matter what. So they're going to get good players. If you keep Fields, I think if you stay at 1, you just draft Harrison at 1 and then you go about your business. But who knows? Or they can trade it down and get a couple more picks. But yeah, Packers looked good. Jordan Love looked real good. Vikings are never bad. They're always a 500 team. And then, I do think if they re-sign Cousins, they're going to be, 10-7 or whatever, playoff bound most likely. I think they were on their way to the playoffs this year if you would have been healthy the whole year. And then the Lions are going to be there, so that's 3. And then the Bears, who knows? But we'll see how that goes. And yeah, that's what's just great about the NFL is you just don't know. You get a good draft pick, just like the Lions draft this year. Campbell was a part of that from Iowa. Laporta ended up being an absolute stud. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Where he was first team, all pro as a rookie, beating out other Hawkeye tight ends, as a rookie. So yeah, Laporta, Deion Branch was another one. So they hit on their draft. And if you go 3 for 3 with your draft, you can flip your script real fast.
Yeah, I mean that division, like you said, I mean that's what's great about the NFL. We could sit here and talk about that division for an hour, but
Yep.
The Bears are obviously going to be the main topic, I think, coming into the draft, and obviously that's Trevor's probably favorite.
Oh yeah, we'll probably spend an entire episode just talking about the Bears and what they do and what they should do and what they will do, and then sometime they're going to have to make a decision and probably announce it. Keep Fields or trade Fields, and if somehow they could get a first round out of Fields, you have to trade him. I mean, I just don't.
I think they're going to trade. I don't think you're going to get a first rounder, but I think you might get a second and a fifth. And because the thing is, you're going to have to sign him to a big deal, and you might as well get Williams on a rookie contract. I mean,
Right.
because
That's all it's about.
Fields is electric, but he's also has not, like you say, he hasn't won many games. I mean, I think he needs a fresh start. He's got the potential to be very good. I think, financially for the Bears, it makes sense to get Caleb Williams, and then you still got a stockpile of picks, and you just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's go to college football here. Um, Tim Lester, and it was officially announced today. It came out Friday, but and it's always, I was listening to radio this morning, and they were talking. Why isn't it officially announced? What are some reasons? One, when head coaches agree to become the head coach, they sign like a letter of understanding or agreement. It's not a contract, but it's definitely, I'm coming. We agree to pay you. You agree to come here. Assistant coaches, I don't know if they do that. And so I don't know if it took finally, all the, T's crossed and I's dotted till today, or, did he have some reservations, or, you just don't know what it all took. Or, I think one thing that could have been a little thing was there's still one more coaching spot to fill on the offensive side. And is Kirk going to hire that? Is this guy going to hire a guy to come with him to help install his program? And you just don't know. But today it was official. Tim Lester is the offensive coordinator at Iowa. It's very much on brand. I mean, I'm not surprised at this hire. I didn't know this name until, um, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, right before it was announced. But he has been a head coach, so I think that maybe holds some clout to Kirk Ferentz and will help him do that. He played quarterback at Western Michigan and in the XFL. So I'm assuming he'll be the quarterback's coach, which was needed. And, they weren't going to go hire a young guy. It's who everybody wanted, but they weren't going to go hire a young guy that goes run and gun. It just wasn't going to be in the cards with Kirk Ferentz. And so it's going to be a sleepy hire. I would have liked to seen someone a little bit more well known, but you never know. May end up really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the flashy hire, and no one's heard of him. But when you start to look at things, I mean, and you follow Twitter, people are exploding on the hire, how bad it is. But
right.
Again, they want to show his record at Western Michigan,
Yeah.
which in my opinion, he was 500 there. And how many of those times you get paid 500 grand to go to Ohio State and get your butt kicked?
Right.
I mean, you're just throwing out probably 2 losses a year just doing that. So,
right.
And you made a good point. He's a quarterback. I mean, that's a big upgrade from what we had before as an offensive coordinator. So he obviously sees the field. He was a very successful quarterback. So I'm in the wait to be seen, but I don't think it's a bad hire by any stretch. For, like you said, Kirk Ferentz was not going to change his offense too much. But I do think this is a step in the right direction, and as long as we can make around the 75, 80th best offense in the country, we should be very successful.
That's what's so funny is no one's asking to be a top 25 offense. It's just top 75. Heck, even 100 might be good enough. And that's what is funny about this whole thing. And I think it will be interesting if I'd like to see them go get a receivers coach that's really young, almost like a coordinator at some place like Morningside that, they score all kinds of points. Morningside scores 60 points a game, and just go hire him, give him the receivers, let him sit and learn behind, Lester, who's been a head coach at the Division I level, and let him grow as a coach. But kind of all the piss and vinegar of a young coach there.
Yeah, I mean, we need something, to inject a little enthusiasm in the offense, because, like you said, we've watched it here for the last 5 years basically, and it just progressively got worse and worse. And I mean, but just jumping off the NFL with Patrick Mahomes, we got to find something at the quarterback spot.
Yep.
I don't care who your offensive coordinator is. If we can't get something better than Deacon Hill or Spencer Petras, I don't care how great of a play caller you are, you are going to struggle in the Big Ten to move the football.
Absolutely. And I believe it's only going to get a little bit more. I mean, those new teams coming in aren't going to change. Nebraska said they're changing. The league's going to have to change for them, and heard Oregon say that, and Washington say that, or what. No, the league's not going to change. Those teams are going to go a little bit more like a Big Ten team, but it will give them a little bit more spread looks. So you're going to have to probably score 5 more points a game when you play those teams than before. They're going to score 30 a game instead of Northwestern at 24, in my opinion. So you
Yeah.
might have to beat them 33-30 instead of 27-24 at Nebraska or at Northwestern. So I do think you have to have the capability of scoring a few more points against those new teams.
Yeah, you're going to have to score more, and I think you will. I mean, they are offensive minded on the West Coast. Their defenses aren't quite. I mean, I would say Utah out there maybe had the best defense, but
Right.
I mean, USC couldn't stop a good high school team. So I mean, they're basically in the same boat as Iowa, trying to fix their defense, and so it'll be interesting. There'll be some fun matchups here with these new teams, and just to kind of see how things shake out. But in the end, I feel like it'll probably still come down to Ohio State and Michigan when the dust settles.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan obviously hired their offensive coordinator with Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, and that is he probably earned it. Don't kid yourself, but there's also a lot of that in staff continuity as much as there can be. Obviously, Jim probably is going to take a couple of them or a few of them to the Chargers with him, but Sherrone Moore is going to keep the bulk of them, I would assume. And then number one is you can keep your roster as best it can. They're losing a ton of guys just to graduation, excuse me, into the draft, but everybody that can and it is and should come back will probably stay at Michigan instead of leaving to go everywhere else they could have.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to think on that hire. I get it. It's the safe play, but don't kid you. I guarantee that the folks in Columbus, Ohio are ecstatic about the hire because I think Ohio State thinks they're going to take over the Big Ten here for a while with Harbaugh gone. So I think Michigan will be fine in the short term. I want to see, 3-4 years down the road how he's doing then, and then we'll
Well,
determine
I
that
mean,
hire.
it's exact opposite as when Urban Meyer left and Ryan Day took over. Michigan was jumping in the streets. Hey,
Correct.
Urban Meyer, who we couldn't touch, is gone. And then, it took a few years, but then Urban Meyer has now, all his players are gone, and now it's all Ryan Day, and then Michigan hasn't lost to them. I mean, it's the exact opposite. So I 100% agree with you that Michigan's going to have to be a little bit worried. I think, next year they're probably still going to be good. I'm going to still pick Ohio State because Michigan just loses so much. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jim Harbaugh left to go to the Chargers is there is going to be a little bit of step back just because of how many players that they're losing to the draft. And that's what happens when you win a national championship. You have a lot of good players.
Yeah, I mean Harbaugh left at the perfect time. I mean he probably left as on top of college football. He was working his way up there with Saban, obviously with just what he's done. But for Ryan Day, the guy doesn't lose in the Big Ten unless it's to Jim Harbaugh. He about lost his job over it, so he should. I mean, their recruiting classes are insane at Ohio State right now. He's got a ton of pressure on him to probably, if not win it, he better be in the playoffs for dang sure. I think there'll be a
Wow.
coach change at Ohio State.
I mean, next year with the 12-team playoff, he can't just get to the playoffs. He's probably got to get to the semis and maybe even the final, you know, in my
Yeah.
opinion. I mean, you can almost, yeah, I mean, I think you can just, them in Georgia, I mean, I would pencil them in the playoffs today. And I'd bet all my money that I bet on those two teams in the playoff.
Oh, for sure. I was, and when you said that, I was saying he better make the playoffs in the Final Four. But yeah, we
Yeah.
go to next year. Those two, they are a lock. I mean, I worst case, I would say Ohio State maybe has losses, but I don't
Right.
see that. Maybe
Yeah.
one. probably say they're undefeated. So same with Georgia. I mean, as good as the SEC is, but they're not going to lose much. And I think Ohio State at 10-2 is probably still getting in the playoffs. But
Oh yeah,
again, better be in the
they
semis championship game.
yeah they probably better win a game in the playoff. So all right, let's move on to basketball here. We're gonna have a few minutes here before our break, but let's talk Cyclone basketball first, since they've not played as recent. It was an eventful week. You know, we record this Wednesday nights, and last Wednesday night was very eventful at Iowa State. Kansas State was in town. Iowa State comes back and gets the win, but the win loss really was the least news story. Jerome Tang is accusing Iowa State of videoing their huddle and texting or whatever, however you communicate it to the coaching staff. And then Iowa State obviously denies it. Really didn't say much that night, but then, you know, kind of back channeling the Kansas City Star, Wichita paper, kind of, you know, much more saying what was actually done, but no official word from Kansas State in this situation. As of today, there still isn't. And then Saturday after the Kansas game, you know, TJ, you know, just absolutely denies it and whatever. And Jamie Pollard denies it to Seth Davis there at CBS. And really nothing's been said since that I know of. I've been refereeing a lot of basketball, so I haven't been home till 8, 9 o'clock every night. And then Iowa State hasn't played since Saturday. So obviously I'm a little biased as a Cyclone fan and listening to the Cyclone podcast and stuff. And the guy that does that was sitting courtside right behind the seats, and he did not see anything. He does know that, like he said, whether something happened or not, he does believe that Kansas State thinks something happened because they did change where they were having their huddle and they were flustered. He goes, there was something that those guys thought was happening because they changed everything they did during that game. So whether what actually happened, but Kansas State thinks something happened.
Yeah, and I mean, the allegations or rumors that it happened twice before.
Right.
And, you know, it's a big for the K-State coach to say that publicly. I mean, I feel like he better have some hard evidence. Otherwise, you know, that's like accusing someone of rape when it never even happens. You
Right.
make them guilty right away and
Right.
kind of owe a huge apology if it didn't happen. But like you said, it's kind of just died. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I feel like we'd hear more about it.
Well,
And
Kansas State officially still hasn't said anything. Like, yes, it did happen. No, it didn't. And that's where it's getting to me like, well, maybe it didn't happen. But also, if it did happen, you know, you would think that there's channels to go through. You go probably through the conference, I would say, just like the Big Ten did with the Michigan thing. It was a conference deal where, you know, you go to the Big 12 conference, say, hey, we think this is happening. They investigate it, you know, whatever. And then, you know, where Harbaugh got suspended. And if it did happen, Otzelberger suspended or, you know, reprimanded or whatever, at least some statement or something from the Big 12. But there hasn't been a Big 12 statement. There hasn't been a Kansas State statement. Only statement that's been said is the Otzelberger thing after Kansas. And that's
yeah,
what's a little bit weird to me, where somehow I mean, I guess I'm assuming that I guess it's going away and nothing happened. But yeah, you're 100% right. When you start blaming people for stuff, you better have a little bit of evidence anyway.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, like you said, it just could be done. I don't know. I know there's some bad blood there. That's going to be quite a trip to Manhattan when you guys go play there whenever
Oh,
that game.
here's what's funny. So Chris Williams, who does the Cyclone Fanatic podcast and he's on other things and everything, he bought his parents he's from Clarinda. So obviously Manhattan, Kansas isn't super far. He bought them for Christmas tickets to go to Manhattan to the game and probably got good seats, probably got them from the head coach and everything. He's friends with him. And his dad called him or texted him after that game and said, I don't know if I want to go to that game. We might not make it out alive.
Yeah, especially, you know, with what you did to them in football as well.
Right.
They're going to it's Iowa State's not real high on the K-State list right now, that's for sure. So
Right.
That'll be a fun game to watch.
And I think that's the last game. It's like March 9th. I mean, it's late. It's one of the last games of the season. So, Iowa State, if they keep playing the way they are, they could be playing for a lot of big prizes at that game.
Yeah, my take on Iowa, they're very good and they're almost unbeatable at home. It's going to be, can they win on the road? Can they,
Yep.
just like last year, they got in the tournament and, lost early. They got to be able to, it's hard to win on the road in conference play. I get it, especially against, the Big 12's got so many teams that are ranked, but I would think they would be a top 4 seed the way that the years panned out, and they should, you know, have a legit shot to the Sweet 16. And then it's just a matter of
It's
who's
just the
hot at
draw.
the right time.
Yeah, and then it's big if they could get a 3 or 4 seed, which they got to keep winning games. The closest site where they would get advantage would be Omaha, and that would be absolutely huge. Um, you know, Kansas, Houston, whoever comes out on top will probably be there as well. Creighton cannot because Creighton is the host, so that helps them where Creighton cannot be there because they would be close to being able to be that a home team there as well. So if they could get to Omaha, that place would be absolutely nuts with Cyclone fans.
Yeah. Do you ever think as an Iowa State fan, like, because you guys travel so well to the Big 12 championship that
Right.
some people just don't want to travel the next week and you don't get that crowd like you do? Because down there, you basically turn it into it's you guys in Kansas turning it into a home game.
Well, yes and no. Iowa State promotes the heck out of going to Kansas City, and it is a party. Uh, and for the most part, it's a guaranteed game, and there's guaranteed. The way it's been the last few years is the men and women play at the same time, so that's even been better. So you can go watch the women or the men and whatever. And I think the Iowa State fans, you're 100% right, have said, let's do this instead of going to the NCAA tournament. Because sometimes the NCAA tournament, they might play in wherever. It could be close.
Louisville.
It could, yeah, you went and watched them in Louisville when
The
they
point
lost.
in the crowd.
Yeah. And some of it is you just never know when you're playing in the NCAA tournament. Thursday morning, at 11 o'clock, like you watched them in Louisville, for a lot of people, that's hard to get to. Now, Louisville is not unbelievable. You can drive that, and you did. You were headed on your way to Nashville and stuff, but that's a hard thing to do for a lot of people. But with the Big 12 tourney, and what happens at Iowa State a lot is, I would say their first game in the Big 12 tournament probably isn't super well attended, whether it's Wednesday, Thursday. But if they win a game and it's on Friday, they win another game and on Saturday. Each day, more and more people hit the road and make it for a game or two. So, yeah, when they play for a championship in the Big 12, it's crazy. But I would say that crowd's double or triple what it is on their first game.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's for sure.
And I've done that before. When I was in college, we didn't go down the first day, and then we went down, watched them. That was back when it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We left Friday. They won like the first game Friday morning, and so we left Friday night and went to the game Saturday and Sunday. So
yeah, it'll be interesting again. The Big 12.
Oh, it's absolutely crazy. Houston.
Very.
I think if you had to pick a team, it's Houston, and then I think you wouldn't be you wouldn't be wasting your money putting a future bet on Houston to win the whole thing. You may not win with it, but I don't think it's a wasted bet. That's probably a pretty good bet.
And would you be shocked if Kansas won it all? They're always seem to be.
No, actually, that's somebody said. I think it was. I was listening to Murph and Andy today, and I think either Murph or Andy said that this will be the team. Kansas doesn't have as good a team, but nobody's great. I truly believe nobody is great. That this is the year that Kansas does come and win the whole thing. When they're a little bit down, think about a little bit like Kansas City Chiefs. They're not as good as they've been. I truly believe that. But how do you bet against them? Bill Self is really, really good. And getting back to Bill Self and Kansas against Iowa State, yeah, Iowa State won that game. But Bill Self, it's just hard to root against him. I watched his post game. There's video of him. I don't know if you saw, but Iowa State had a dancing cop doing the juicy wiggle with the dance team out there. He stopped. There's video. He stopped his huddle and turned around and watched that cop do it and just smiled and just shook his head. Because one, he loves college basketball. Those guys are college basketball junkies, and he understands Hilton as well as anybody and how just crazy it is and just great a crowd and great atmosphere and great college basketball situation he was in, and he enjoys it.
Yeah, I saw a thing on Twitter too where one of the fans behind him like yelled at Bill. They said, "Hey, Bill, you look nervous," and he
Yep.
turned around and goes, "I am."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You look stressed. I think that was the word.
He
Yeah.
might have been stressed. I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah. I mean, but he's been there forever. He's won a lot of basketball games. He's won his fair share at Hilton. He's got beat his fair share at Hilton. And, shoot, he could lose every game the rest of the year and probably all next year and still never have to worry about his job. So he's really not that stressed.
Yeah, like you said though, the Big 12 has so many teams, but I just think college basketball as a whole is just I don't think it's ever going to be where you're going to have those dominant. I mean, you're always going to have your blue bloods, but the level is just not as good as it used to be with, players are going to the NBA or they're jumping to the G League. So it really opens the door to legitimately 15, 20 teams if they got hot could win the whole thing in my opinion here for a while.
Well, just look at Iowa State's situation. What's happened is Iowa State has three forwards or big men that are 24 years old. Omaha Blue's the most talented player on the entire roster, and he hardly plays because I don't care how good you are or who you are. If you're 18 playing against 23 and 24-year-olds, it doesn't work really well. You're just more mature physically, mentally, everything. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at just pure NBA stock, he probably has the highest, and
Yep.
that's what's crazy about the NBA draft. I mean, they take these players in the top 5 that you don't even hardly. I mean, they'll be like Kentucky's 4th best player, and they're all of a sudden the second best. They're the second pick in the draft. It's so much off of
Potential.
Perceived talent, and it's crazy.
All right, let's take a break here. We'll come back and talk Hawkeye basketball when we come back.